Hey you, so I wanted to talk about is silver precious, but before I get into that I wanted to give a shout out to Monkey Swag, Mr. Monkey Swag, and Ikeo for giving me shouts out on Instagram, and just to put out there just in case anybody watching this hasn't realized or remembered or no, I am also on other platforms now, broaden my horizon, so you can catch me down on Instagram, Shadowstack69. You can catch me on Steemit, so that's at Steemit Shadowstack, and you can also catch me down in the Silver Forum. I'm a lot more active on all three platforms now, so I'll leave links to all of those in the description. So that's Instagram, Steemit, and the Silver Forum. So just a shout out for Monkey Swag and Ikeo that done a shout out for me on Instagram. So breaking into this conversation on silver here, it's interesting because I'm asking, is silver precious, or is silver still precious, or has silver lost its precious status? And it comes about really as I was having a conversation with a friend, and it's how he sees silver as it currently is. So for myself personally, I still think it is, but I've seen how the drive in society has pushed it into more of an industrial metal. So I'd really love to get some opinions in the comments as to whether you still see silver as a precious metal. Do you believe it's lost its precious status? So I'm sharing these 1 ounce lunar horse coins that I have in the background as I talk about this. Now, as I mentioned, I believe silver is precious, but I also know and acknowledge that those that are running the paper market have done they've been on a crusade to outright demonize precious metals or any metal that hold that kind of status. Now, when we're looking at silver and gold, gold hasn't technically lost its precious status, as it's not used nowhere as much as silver, whereas with silver I've seen the drive is now to just write it off as an industrial metal alone. But when you look at silver and gold, both precious metals, as to how they've been used over the time, they both had the precious status, they were both rare, they've both been used in coinage, and now silver, in my opinion, should be a lot more higher, and as we all know, both metals should be a lot more higher than they are. But as we've moved forward more technologically, silver's being used in more and more products. It seems to have been devalued more and more now. That can be because it's been of better interest to those in the technology area and department, where they can get some of the more important components for their devices at damn near rock bottom price. But I've mentioned in the video before, I've come across and seen information that states the amount of silver per device, even though it must be used, it can't be replaced, is very tiny. So when people think it's an industrial metal, it can't go up, otherwise prices, I know the iPhone will be ridiculous. The amount of silver, I mean, people are thinking they've even got a gram or an ounce, should I say, when in reality they contain real small amounts. I mean, it does such a fantastic job if it's being used for conductivity, that only small amounts are needed. So when people say or label it strictly as a industrial metal, yes, I do agree with that, but I don't think that's a good reason to write it off as not having a precious status no more. So just purely putting it under an industrial metal doesn't work in its favor. I mean, having paper forms has done fantastically, and just demonizing and just outshadowing the physical forms, whereas the common talk is, well, who wants to lug around, I don't know, 1,000 ounces when you can just buy it in paper form? They've got the illusion of a promise if should they want to cash out, they can get it in physical form, and they're not worried about musical chairs and the merry-go-round and should it stop, everybody running at the same time, because they do it right and they can pull out some funds in the meantime. I don't know, if a crash comes every 10 years, I'm sure they'll be able to pull their initial interest out or input out and then take it from there. So it's not a lot of these things that would and should deter an individual and push them straight into the physical market. It hasn't, and I can see it working for them, and it's worked for them. So there's a massive push. I mean, silver is really snubbed upon from any serious investor. All serious investors that wanted to get into physical silver haven't. They've gone into paper as it's more convenient, and as times have gone by, the push as to it's not a precious metal, it's an industrial metal, is really sticking. So I wanted to see what people's thoughts were on that, whether you believe that is the case and it is just an industrial metal. It can be looked upon like taboo for us cuckoos that are basically waiting for a price correction or a crash. You know, we are technically preppers in our own right, and that we're protecting ourselves. It's supposed to be the storage of wealth, but it can drop. So we're in the paper game whether we like it or not. We're going along for the ride. The only plus side we get from this, if you're in it for the long term, is knowing that a crash has to come about and then a correction will come. So if you got in at the right point, which is very important, which is a low point, I mean, you don't want to be buying in a high and then wait for a price correction and it dips down from there. But I mean, anybody watching this and being around, if you're dollar cost averaging, would have gotten at a fantastic price. So we have that benefit to look forward to, knowing that we're just physical holders. But physical is and has become somewhat of a taboo. You know, a lot of the people, if you look around stacking precious metals, if you was just doing it for investment purposes, stacking physical, it can get somewhat boring. This is why the collector coin market and these mints just add another twist to it. But even then, it's not really, when you're looking at collector coins, the fact that they're precious isn't really pushed first. So it's just looking at it from a wide angle and seeing whether the general consensus is in, and silver specifically, is it really classed as a precious metal here and today? And then in your eyes, do you see it as a precious metal, or do you just see it as a metal that's extremely undervalued? You couldn't care less what the title is. Is it an industrial metal? Is it just a metal? Is it a barbarous relic? Is it a metal in extreme abundance? So we're going to have an asteroid drop tomorrow and it's going to contain nothing but silver on it. So, you know, it'd be real interesting to find out how you actually label this when you either speak to individuals or when you speak to yourself, and you really see yourself and see it as a precious metal stacker and it as a precious metal. So it'd be fantastic to know. As I've mentioned, I still do see it as a precious metal. It started off as a precious metal since the beginning of time when individuals were using it for that. I mean, its uses have become more and more, and it seems to have got demoted from that status now. Understandably, we had horses and carriages back then, so it was used more as coinage, but as it's become more and more vital and important, I can't see how its status has been demoted. When you're looking at it for medical purposes, I couldn't see the medical industry going full throttle with silver for all of its antimicrobial properties, and that if you can't slap a patent on it, I can't really see them really pushing it forward. So it'll always be more of a backyard remedy for individuals that choose to use it for colloidal silver and the likes of. But it definitely has many uses in many ways, but the big boys in charge just ain't pushing it, and it'd be work a lot better for them if it could just be suppressed and buried and people would just forget about it. So putting that question out there, it'd be fantastic to hear what you guys actually think of it in terms of a status. Do you see it as a precious metal? Because there's a lot of people that don't and see it purely as an industrial metal, like it's never had the precious status. So go ahead and leave your comments in the comments. It'd be fantastic if you subscribe if you ain't done so already. And definitely come along and visit me on the platforms, on the other platforms in the links, and get one more look at one of these horses, and I'll catch you guys on the rebound.